To honor our next coach, we have a 1976 Olympian. He's the current women's head coach at the Air Force Academy. And to introduce and speak about Coach Jay Fitzgerald is Coach Casey Converse.
Coach Dalen, was Don Sonia the goggle man? Does anybody know that in here? Yes. Yeah, he was the goggle man. Somebody told me a story recently about him at a national meet with there was a functional goggle finally invented, about the time I swam. And he had them all over his arms, and he would sell them for $2 a piece or something. But anyway, they remembered him as the goggle man. I've known Jay and Buffy Fitzgerald for 35 years or so. Our lives became intertwined when Jay came to the University of Alabama to be the distance coach with Don Gambrell. And you know Jay because you see him at all the swim meets, so I try to think of some things you might not know about Jay as a man, and came up with a couple of things. Jay is a family man. His son Patrick is here, his youngest son. He just finished an apprenticeship up in New York City this summer. And he and my daughter Maggie have grown up to be good friends, and they're in a contest to see who can take the longest to get their undergraduate degree. And if Maggie changes her major one more time, she's going to win. And his second son, middle son Joey, is working his way up through the ranks of college football coaching. He's at Florida Atlantic, so they're busy trying to figure out a way to beat Middle Tennessee tomorrow, so he can't be here. Ryan, our lives kind of made full circle with Jay and Buffy, and both personally and professionally. When Ryan came to the Air Force Academy, their oldest son, he's a captain in the Air Force now, and he swam for us, and we spent many a morning in the distance lane together during his 4 years here. It's a testament to a mother and a father and to a family when their children grow up to be people of character. My daughter Rosie and Ryan are pretty good friends, and she's been through a rough patch in the last few months, and Ryan's been one of the people to reach out to her and encourage her. And that's the kind of people they're growing up to be. Second thing you might not know about Jay is he's an incredibly loyal friend. In the 70s, it was fashionable, or maybe it wasn't fashionable, but we had people of a certain age remember the POW and MIA bracelets, right, that everybody had. And the idea was that you would remember a POW or someone who was missing in action in Vietnam, and you would wear this bracelet forever. And I had one, and I know where it is. It's in a box, but I don't wear it forever, and I don't think many of us did. But if you notice, sometime Jay has a bracelet on his wrist for a friend he lost in Vietnam, and that's the kind of man he is. He's a tremendously loyal friend. Personally, I was a swimmer at University of Alabama, and Jay was my coach in my sophomore year, and I'm afraid Don Gambrell is not here because I put one too many gray hairs on his head, and that's why he couldn't make it. But in my sophomore year, truth be told, I missed a few workouts. So I arrived at the NCAA meet not really ready to go a mile, maybe as well as I had done quite the year before. And I was kind of hoping that I would qualify 15th or something, and I could swim in the morning and slink out the door at night and not be noticed. But as it happened, I ended up 8th, and so I had to swim in lane 8 in the finals. So I'm not having a good time. It's the longest 3 days of my life, right? And Jay's the low guy on the totem pole at this point at Alabama, so he's the rub-down guy. If you remember back in the day when coaches used to be the rub-down guy, that very thought makes the hair stand up on my arm right now. But in the quiet moments, I mean, Jay knew where, kind of how my brain was working at that point. And I had to stand up and swim a mile, and I'm the defending NCAA champion and so forth. So, and it's going to be ugly. So Jay, in those quiet moments, this is a loose translation of what he said, but he said essentially, you know, you've been doing this for a long time. You're going to stand up on the blocks. You're going to swim a mile as fast as you can do it today, and that's all you really have to do. And, you know, sort of the weight of the world came off my shoulders, and, you know, sure enough, I fell in the pool and finished an ugly mile and went on with my life. Years and years later, I was a young coach. I'd been coaching kind of to make gas money in Kansas while I finished up my undergrad degree. I'm a little bit ahead of Patrick. But, Jay called at one point and said, he was at Cincinnati at that point, he said, I need somebody to come over here and coach the age groupers, and I understand you've been coaching. We had kind of lost touch with each other, but he called me out of the blue and invited me over. And I said, Jay, I'm in my 19th semester of undergraduate. I've got to get this done, so I can't come. So I finished that semester, and somewhere within there, when the time frame, I realized I wasn't going to be a very good third grade teacher, and coaching was what I really wanted to do. So I called him in November and said, you know, is there still a job? And he said, yeah, come on over. So I packed up my new wife. We went to Cincinnati. He didn't stay very long. He went almost immediately to Santa Clara to refurbish Santa Clara Swim Club. But the one memory I have from that time was we were sitting in the office together, and Jay, I said, I was working on a newsletter or something that had to go out, and I said, Jay, how do you spell Cincinnati? It's got a lot of I's and N's and T's in it, you know. I don't know where they all go. And he goes, in typical Jay gruff voice, better look that up, son. And that was the end of it. That's kind of how Jay's been with me all of my life. He's encouraged me. He's kicked me in the butt when I needed it. And he's touched the lives of a lot of people. A lot of young people's lives have been enriched by Jay Fitzgerald. And I include myself in that group. And ladies and gentlemen, Jay Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Casey, thank you. We had a lot of fun in Bama, and there were a lot of good times. First person I want to thank, and Casey was right, we met 35 years ago. I met Don Gambrell here, not here in Vegas, but in Montreal in 1972 at my first ASCA convention. And then met him a little later on, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, it was 35 years ago today that I did go to the University of Alabama, and the first person I want to thank is my wife, Buffy. We got married on August 27th. We drove to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and spent a glorious honeymoon in one of the most exotic places you would ever want to know, which was called the Moonwinks Inn. And I think the Moonwinks is still there, just like the Riviera is today. And I was on deck coaching the morning of August 29th. And then, and we had, you know, workouts and things along those lines. And Coach Gambrell had assigned all the different assistants which mornings they would be there, and I was only supposed to be there certain mornings, but I showed up every day. And one day, I like my coffee in the morning, and so one day I forgot to get it, and I called Buffy. We didn't have cell phones then. We had to go in the office and actually do something. And Buffy brought it, and Coach Gambrell saw that, and Coach Gambrell went over to Buffy and said, "Don't ever do that again. That man needs to learn how to take care of himself." And she never did bring me coffee again in the morning, but she stayed with me for 35 years and a lot of moves. We went from Tuscaloosa to Nashville, back to Tuscaloosa to Cincinnati, from Cincinnati to Houston, Texas, and the Dad's Club, and then from Houston back to Cincinnati, then from Cincinnati back to Santa Clara, and from Santa Clara down to Fort Lauderdale, and she's never complained a bit. And she's been a great raising 3 wonderful sons. Our oldest is Ryan. As you heard, he's in the Air Force. He swam for Casey at the Air Force Academy, and he's done a great job and made us really proud all along. And then our other son, Joey, is he's going through the ranks right now. He's a graduate assistant, so I know what that means. No pay, a lot of hours, and you better be there. So as much as he would have liked to have been here tonight, they're playing Middle Tennessee, and FAU right now is 1-0, and I hope to God they're 2-0 tomorrow, because after that, they're going to go to Georgia and play Georgia, and after that, they go to Bama to play Bama. And I told him, Joey, why don't you guys just find a nice hospital room in Atlanta and see if you can get a big ice tub after the Georgia game, and then maybe put them in the whirlpool before the Bama game, and then just take them home. And then our youngest son, Patrick, is here, and we're very proud of them, and Buffy's done a great job raising them while I've been trooping all around. And I'm extremely excited. I want to congratulate all the other coaches that are going into the Hall of Fame this year. I'm very pleased to be going in with a very good friend of mine, Greg Troy. We're going in the same class, and Greg's been a great friend and a great mentor for many, many years. Matter of fact, when I was at Santa Clara, he was at Bowles, and Pinecrest contacted me, and it's a private school in South Florida, and Bowles is somewhere else, I don't know, North Florida. They do very well. We haven't done quite so well. But I asked Greg, and he and I had some very good conversations, and he kind of encouraged me to look at Pinecrest a lot more seriously, and I'm very glad he did, because we've had a great 17-year run there, and it's been very good. But the ironic thing is, my oldest is Ryan, his oldest is Patrick. My youngest is Patrick, his youngest is Ryan. My middle is Joey, his middle is Jeffrey. So there's been some interesting dialogues between us, you know. We've had the boys over. Greg and Missy were very gracious when we went to a meet in Clearwater when I first got there, and I didn't quite understand everything about Florida swimming coming from Pacific Swimming. They had some different rules within their LSC. And any rate, we had a good time, and I think it was either Patrick or Jeffrey, I don't know which one, but one of the Troys invited Joey. So Joey went and stayed with the Troys for the rest of the weekend. And then Greg made sure that he gave him a going away present. He says, now, Joey, when you get back, you make sure you tell your dad how much fun you had. And here's a nice shirt for you to show him. And he had a Bowles t-shirt. And Joey looked at Greg and said, I don't think my dad wants to see that at our house. He said, I thank you very much, Mr. Troy, but you can keep your shirt. So we've had a lot of good times, and we've had a lot of good fun together. I also want to thank some very important people in the coaching world that really helped me. It was Jack Schultz, who was a roommate to Ron Ballator. I swam for Jack Schultz at Virginia Commonwealth University, that convinced me to get into coaching. And he really helped me a great deal, and he was the man who brought me to the ASCA conventions, walked me around and introduced me to people like Peter Dale and George Haynes, and of course Don Gambrell. And Dick Hanula looked the same in Montreal in 1972 that he looks like now at Las Vegas in 2012. So but I do want to thank Jack for what he did. Don Gambrell gave me a fantastic base and really helped mold me to become a good coach, I hope. And then from there, Don really understood a lot of things. And in the summers, he would send not only his swimmers out, but his coaches. And the first summer, he sent me to Paul Bergen, and I worked with him in Nashville. The second summer, I worked with Skip Kenny when he was in Cincinnati. So I had some pretty good teachers teaching me along the way. And I know there was a talk today about, you know, coaches, you can learn from so many good coaches. That's one of the things about our sport. We do share a great deal of information with each other, and everybody's willing to give you a hand and tell you things. So if you're a young coach and you're looking to do things, just go find one of these people. They will help you. And I know that for a fact because Don Gambrill certainly helped me. And I remember how easy it was for him to give me that job because I asked him for that job. I was at the 76 Nationals. I had my first senior national swimmer. Casey was lighting up the pool in the distance lanes over there at the Philadelphia Nationals. I knew Ron Ballator, so I was just a young guy and I just followed wherever Ron went, figured he might lead me somewhere. And you know, Sticks was always leading you somewhere. You didn't always know if you wanted to go there, but he would always lead you somewhere. And anyhow, I was with him, and Jonty Skinner, another good friend of ours, just happened to swim and break the world record in the 100-meter free. And Sticks said, "Come on, Gambrill, let's go to dinner." So they turned and looked at me, and I'm just standing there with a watch, and he says, "Were you coming?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go with you." And we had a good dinner, and then I asked Gambrill a little later on in the week if I could have a job, and he said, "Well, I got all my staff settled, and you know, I really don't have anything for you, and there's no more budget left." I said, "Don, I didn't ask for money, I just asked for a job." He said, "We'll see you in September." And that was the way it was, and that's the way it is sometimes. If you really want to learn and you really want to go through some things, sometimes you got to be willing to take a gamble on yourself and take a little bit of a sacrifice along the way. And Buffy went ahead and worked at Bama Exterminators while we were at Bama and dispatching all those trucks. And to this day, Coach Gambrill still calls her termite. So, so we've had a lot of fun, and I've had a lot of great athletes, and I've had a lot of great coaches that have helped me along the way. A lot of my assistant coaches like Randy Julian from the Dads Club, Billy Thompson from Santa Clara, Keith Schmidt from Santa Clara, Mark Williams from Cincinnati, and you know, Alex from Pinecrest, Mariusz Podkaszelny, I got that out, from Pinecrest. Those guys have really helped me do a great job, and I appreciate the idea that I was given a lot of good athletes that helped me look pretty good. So I want to thank all of them as well. And thank you all very much for this honor.